While I make every effort to broadcast correct information, I'm also still learning. I will double check all my facts, but realize that healthcare is a constantly changing science and art. One doctor or healthcare provider may have a different way of doing things from another. I welcome any comments, suggestions, or correction of errors. I take no money from supplement or device companies. By listening to this podcast or reading this blog, you agree not to use this podcast or blog as medical advice or to treat any medical condition in either yourself or others, including but not limited to patients that you are treating. Consult your healthcare provider for any medical issues that you may be having. This entire disclaimer also applies to any guests or contributors to the podcast or the website. Under no circumstances shall any guests or contributors to the podcast or blog or any employees, associates, or affiliates of the Boss Body podcast be responsible for damages arising from use of the podcast or the blog. This blog or podcast should not be used in any legal capacity whatsoever, including but not limited to establishing the standard of care in a legal sense or as a basis for expert witness testimony. No guarantee is given regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on the podcast or the blog. What's up, guys? It's Dr. Tim Jackson with another episode of the Boss Body Podcast. Today, I have with us Miss Christine Coen. For over 12 years, Christine's work as a dietitian plus fitness professional has evolved based on her own struggle in overcoming of burnout and anxiety, as well as depression, through a variety of holistic methods that she now teaches today. Her work fuses simple but powerful somatic practices, nervous system healing out of chronic fight, flight, freeze, and tuning into the wisdom of your own body. She is passionate about helping stress type A's break through stress and burnout to increase energy and flow in life and work. Welcome to the show, Miss Christine Coen.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Tim.
You're very welcome. So I see your videos all the time. I can't log into Instagram without really seeing you. You know, it's kind of like instead of
So sorry.
Waldo, it's where's Christine. And, you know, I was asking you off camera, like, you seem to always have something to say. I mean, it's always good and people need to hear it. But define somatic practices. What are those?
So somatic practices is actually a term that I was recently introduced to in the last few years. And when I first heard it, I was like, I don't even understand that. But when you really break it down, all it means is practices that are using the approach of going through your body. So like somatic, the essence of that word is the body. And so it can literally be anything that involves moving your body physically, like exercise, like traditional exercise, or movements that help your body release what I would call like stuck survival energy, or like, you know, that restless energy, that anxious energy that you feel the sensations of, that you experience the feeling of, the emotion of, or like the physical sensation of. And you can help use your body to release that, as opposed to like the complement to that would be like a cognitive behavioral therapy. So going through the mind to help to shift, you know, your thinking, to shift your cognition, to shift how you're feeling. This is approaching it through the body. So that's all it is.
Something that really stuck out to me when I read the answers that you gave me to the questions I have people fill out. And that was, in order to change something, you have to feel it. You can't just intellectualize it. And that's where I think the limitations of cognitive behavioral therapy come in, because they tell you to kind of ignore your body, to think through it logically, use the prefrontal cortex. But you have a unique background as both registered dietitian and a personal trainer. And so most people with your background would say, oh yeah, just work out more, eat less, don't lift heavy weights, do cardio 5 days a week. But you're not on that bandwagon, are you?
No, not at all.
Okay. Well, that's great.
I probably would say the exact opposite of everything you just said.
Yeah, I know.
But you know, everyone's different.
when I was in undergrad, I mean, when I first started working out my freshman year, I would lift once, sometimes twice a day. I was lifting for up to 2 hours at a time, something
It's a
catabolic.
long time. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, when you're 18, you can recover, but I was becoming or going into a hormonal deficit essentially. And
Hmm.
so talk to listeners about how exercise can be a good stressor or a bad stressor.
Yeah. Well, just like anything, literally in life, too much of a
Mhm.
good thing eventually won't be good for you anymore. I was giving this example like with the sun or with water or with sleep. Like too much of anything is always gonna, you're gonna hit a limit like
Right.
of what your body can handle. And
Mhm.
so exercise is an amazing stressor for your body in the sense that it literally gives it like small doses of stress that is give like making the body work a little harder than it
Mhm.
would normally have to, combined with ideally something that you're enjoying doing. So you're enjoying doing this stressful activity, which in combination is physically building your body's resilience, your body's ability to adapt to
Mhm.
any stress that it can encounter in life. Because even though the stressors may look different on the outside, it could be traffic, it could be family, it could be work, it could be mental health, it could be toxins in the air, like it could be anything. The body,
Right.
once it gets in, is going to interpret it through the same stress response reaction.
Right.
So when you're like if you're practicing a sport, you're basically practicing to get better at stress. And so exercise is amazing for that. Plus you get all the boosts of all like the feel good chemicals, which helps you feel good and keep going and feel great afterwards. But like anything, you can overdo it. You can over exercise. It can be alone be like something that exacerbates somebody into like an HPA axis dysfunction where your stress response is over responding, but it usually is like in combination with other things an
Mhm.
exacerbator of that dysfunction already. But I mean, similar to anything, like how do you know if you're over exercising? I think one of the biggest keys is that you don't feel better when you do it. You don't feel better after. Like you could actually have an energy crash afterwards. You feel like just more tired. You just feel like strung out, kind of this like wired, tired feeling. You never get that like, oh wow, that felt good. That
Right.
felt invigorating feeling. And then so those are some signs that you can look for to know like if you're pushing your body too hard. And that is really it was really a subjective thing because based on where the person's physical body is at, where that person is individually, too stressful of movement. Like for my clients who do struggle with autoimmune flare ups, a walk could be that for them, could be too stressful for where their body is at that moment in time. So they would want to step back a little bit and use maybe other somatic practices that are more gentle, that are more nourishing to where their system's at to help build that resilience a little slower. Whereas somebody could be, running marathons every day and be killing it at life, so
Right.
it's really subjective.
Yeah. So, in functional medicine, we use the term allostatic load to refer to the total combination of internal and external stressors a person has, whether it's stealth pathogens, mold, heavy metals, gut dysbiosis, stuck in traffic, etc. But you mentioned marathons. Do you think it's possible for someone to be a marathon runner and in today's world and still be healthy?
That's a good question. I mean, I'll say yes because anything's possible.
Right.
So I'm sure there are people. I think that it would be harder just because of the amount of physical stress and endurance that you're asking of your body just in the training of such
Right.
long runs. So you'd really have to work in smart recovery, like really smart nutrition and everything else in your life that would be considered a stressor. You'd really have to manage, I think, to make that a sustainable, like long term thing. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I know just one bout of long distance training is enough to lower your secretory IgA, your mucosal immune system. And so I imagine long term the data is even more, damaging.
Mm.
But let's talk about the average client that you work with. Is it males, females, young, middle-aged? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's probably mostly females, but I do work with both. And I would say like 30s, like 30s, 40s plus, mid 30s and over is really where people start to feel like their bodies are breaking down and they're
Mhm.
not recovering as well, and they start to feel like these symptoms are just kind of piling on themselves, and they
Right.
feel, they're just not themselves anymore, and they are starting to seek out something to help them. Yeah.
Gotcha. Great. And so, what is your approach in terms of running labs? So I know you talk a lot about burnout and stress. So do you look at the HPA axis, cortisol, DHEA, things like that?
I do, but I actually wait. I don't actually have the person order those stress tests, I guess you'd refer to them as, because often, I know that they say like don't get a test, don't guess, but often, especially with cortisol, you can kind of take a really good educated guess
Yeah.
based on what that person's symptoms are and what they're experiencing on a regular basis
Hmm.
to kind of have a good starting point. So I like to not test unnecessarily, and I just felt like it was a little redundant for salivary cortisol testing. I use
Yeah.
Precision Analytics. Their testing is amazing. I've done it myself, and it's great and terrific in that way. So usually, like, if, let's just say, the first 3 months round of approaches that we're doing in terms of
Hmm.
lifestyle, in terms of nutrition, in terms of just basic supplementation to support, an HPA axis dysfunction, is still not really budging the needle, then we'll go into some deeper testing and see what's going on.
And I know you mentioned females with autoimmune issues or neuroimmune issues. Is that a demographic that you work a great deal with?
It's not so much anymore. I wanted to focus a little bit more. It kind of was broadening my scope, and I felt
Mhm.
like it was diluting what I do best. And
Right.
so there's some, I guess, we'll call them more basic, more common autoimmune stuff that I come across, like
Hmm.
Hashimoto's, like, gluten sensitivity. Trying to think of some other common ones that will just show up. But if someone's like really in the weeds, I'd rather consult with somebody. Yeah, that
Gotcha.
feels better. Mhm.
And so I know you have a free course on burnout, correct?
I have a free workbook on
Workbook.
burnout, but the course
Okay.
is paid. Yeah,
Okay. But it's all centered on burnout, correct?
it's all centered on burnout, chronic stress driven burnout. So typically people associate the word burnout with like just their job and
Right.
just work, but it's truly physically, mentally, emotionally draining from any sources of chronic stress. And I think that just expands the healing process for people when we take it outside of the scope of
Yeah.
just their work.
Absolutely. And so you work with a lot of high performers, I'm assuming, since they by nature are type A. How do you
Mhm.
work on getting them out of the fight or flight state? And how do we even know if we're in a fight or flight state if we don't
Yeah,
feel
so
that just?
that's like one of the first things I help people to learn about themselves is to basically read their own sensation, like be attuned to their body, read their own body's signs and symptoms. I actually have this because I was giving a talk last night. So I made this like chart. It's called, I just made it like the embodied attunement chart. I can send you a copy of it, but
That's awesome.
I sell it for like $4. And I categorize like freeze, fight, flight, safety state, which is essentially your parasympathetic nervous system where we're supposed to live and we feel, our best and most open. And I put all the most common like physical symptoms that people may experience when
Okay.
they're triggered into this state. And ideally, we're talking about someone who's like chronically perpetually stuck in this state or really easily reacts in this to this state rather. And so, fight or flight is typically like anxiety, um, irritability, anger, worry, concern, rumination, your heart's racing, your body's sweating, your heart rate goes up a little bit, your blood pressure goes up. And that is a place where people are going to experience like angst and anxiety and a lot of those common symptoms, and you're stuck in that sympathetic nervous system response. The freeze state is a little bit different. It is more of like a hard break. So often people who are burnt out, they have lived in fight or flight for so long. They probably thought it was just like their personality to just live in this like high pressure, like go, go, go hustle. Right. They probably thrived in it for a little because you get a good cortisol boost, you get a good adrenaline boost, you have a ton of energy. You're just like, let's go. And then after, time or a certain amount of things builds up, then your body really starts to crash or burn out. And I feel like the freeze state is probably where that nervous system response is. And it's that hopeless, it's that just drained, it's that numb feeling. It's hard to find any, you have a lot of apathy, very low motivation.
Stop interacting with your environment.
Yes. Yep. I find it so interesting, like even the tone of your voice changes, like you don't make eye contact in the same way with people, you really withdraw. And so those are the three survival states that people will flow in and out of and kind of feel stuck in. And so when I started to learn this and I started to put together this in terms of helping people to shift their states, not by thinking that there's themselves through it, or not even by talking through it, or like understanding why they're in it and like thinking cognitively through it. But because the nervous system, I like to say, nervous system doesn't speak in words. It doesn't speak English. It doesn't speak Spanish. It doesn't speak ancient Greek. It communicates through senses. It communicates through our emotions. It communicates through felt sensation. And so if it's communicating to us, our prefrontal cortex through that, we need to speak back through that. And that's really where somatic practices like just opened the door to helping people not only recognize where they're at, but also to match what their nervous system state actually needs to get to the goal of coming down into your parasympathetic, or what I call, because the parasympathetic is like such a hard word to remember, barely remember it. I just call it your safety state, where you feel safe and good and connected and open and wanting to connect with your environment. And your physical body represents that. Your mental state represents that. And when I started to practice this, I just found myself so much more easily able to shift in a way that wasn't forcing myself there, that wasn't taking willpower to shift myself there, but that was actually like guiding that deeper, more primal, more subconscious part of me there in a way that felt so much more natural. So yeah, I just gave you a long-winded answer, but
no, that's great. Thanks for the thorough answer. When it comes to helping people figure out what's causing their burnout, how do you go about that?
We talk a lot. We talk about it. We go through a lot of the things that would kind of come up on a common basis. We usually start with just the most obvious things, and that's usually something in their work environment, something in their home, in their relationships, some habit that they are doing maybe unknowingly that's contributing to this. So it kind of, usually the secret ones, the hidden ones, are the ones that we like lay some light on. But often I tell people to follow their emotions. Like, when do you feel resentful? When do you feel anxious? When do you feel angry? When are you restless? When are you finding yourself like feeling ashamed or feeling stuck? And we kind of go there, and then we go deeper into, well, what about what you're believing is potentially causing this? When it comes to the physical causes, I mean, that's just like through a detailed, basically medical questionnaire and timeline, we sort of put the pieces together, and then we could see, oh, wow, like your parents got divorced when you were younger and then you went to another school and this happened, or oh, you were using a lot of antibiotics when you were a teenager, or oh, you had that mold growing in your house for 3 years and didn't realize it. And we could put some pieces together on the physical side of things through that.
So it's interesting. I was just having this conversation with another colleague a few weeks ago about the people in the United States being emotionally constipated.
Hmm.
And that was sort of the phrase that we came up with. But what you're saying you have your clients do is to tune in to those emotions, not ignore or suppress them.
Right. Because that's what
What,
people do anyway.
yeah, right.
We just are so out of touch with our bodies, with our emotions. We're afraid of how we feel. We are ashamed of how we feel. We often don't feel our feelings, but we think a lot about our feelings and we tell stories about what we're feeling, but we never actually get to the feeling of it, which again is why this work is so cool, because often you don't have to go through the deep dark memories of why this is happening or really like relive them or retell them, but you can feel the feelings and give yourself essentially what your system needs to heal. Healing is done through feeling at the end of the day and releasing.
Absolutely. Do you know much about the Safe and Sound protocol with Dr. Stephen Porges?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. But
Yeah,
not like
so
probably as well versed as you do.
yeah, I didn't know if you use that or incorporated any of that into sort of processing trauma. I have several colleagues who have ketamine clinics, and I don't think everyone needs to do ketamine, but I think, along with proper work like what you're doing, it can be a good adjunct. Do you have any biohacking tools like the Muse headband or the M Wave that you use to help stress mitigation?
I actually don't. And I get approached a lot by those companies to like promote them on social media. And I, they probably help. And I honestly have not looked into the research of it, but I feel like we have access to this stuff without technology. Like we don't need, it's all within us. We
Right.
have these tools. We have so many, like, I just find that being able to tap into it, finding what works for you to release to do this work
Right.
without a biohacking tool, as cool as they are, as like
Right.
interesting, and as like how much we want to like get into it, we have this innate ability within our own selves, and I want
Absolutely.
to help people tap into that first, and then then they can go have at it and
It's
hack away.
interesting. What I'm hearing you say is basically what you're teaching people is the stuff that we get taught as kids that it was wrong, because we get taught don't feel sad, don't feel X, don't feel Y. And you're teaching people feel that and tap into that, and that you're more powerful than you've been led to believe.
Yeah, that's well said.
And so, in terms of seeing clients one on one, are you currently accepting new clients? I'm sure I'll get an email or two or 10 asking if you do.
I'm right now, I'm not taking any one-on-one clients. I'm just working with people in my group course, because I just find that the combination of me teaching of the exercises that they're doing and of being in community is like a magic formula that just doesn't quite exist when you do one-on-one. And of course, some people absolutely need one-on-one personalized attention. But I just find that for what most people come to me looking for, they get really well, like more than they thought through this group program.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about emotional freedom technique, or EFT, and how does that factor into what you do in your work?
Oh my gosh, I love EFT. I'm I was a skeptic, hardcore skeptic when I first learned about it, which was through binge eating coaching. And I had thought it was super cool. I thought all the science was amazing, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, it's like not that, it's not going to be that effective. Like whatever
Right.
these people are on, like I don't get it. But I still taught it and I still had clients really get benefits from it, but I wasn't using it myself consistently, like for personal reasons, until probably the last 2-ish years. And so I have just found that so EFT is basically tapping on meridian points of your body, basically like acupuncture points or acupressure points that, we have all over our body. And there are specific ones that have been, chosen on your face, on your body, sometimes on your hands, depending
I
on who
think
you work
one of
with.
them's here, correct?
One of them's right at the like eyebrow nose bridge point, like right
Okay.
there, like at the very tip of your eyebrow. Another one is right here on the side of your eye on the bone. The next one is under the eye, right on the eye, like the eye bone there. Then you have one right under the nose, one right below your bottom lip. Then you have your collarbone points, so it's like right below the collarbone. Then you have the side rib, I would call it. And then I like to tap on the front ribs right here and like your lowest ribs, and then the top of the head. Those are the ones that I use. And so it's a combination of this acupressure system that you're accessing while you are speaking out loud. And basically what you're speaking out loud is all the thing that is bothering you, the negative feeling, what you're feeling in the moment. And so it often starts out with like this anxiety in my body, this tightness in my chest. And you're really just like being with yourself as you're experiencing that uncomfortable sensation. And the tapping is activating your parasympathetic safety state nervous system. So you're basically giving your body safety signals while you're feeling this uncomfortable thing, and basically telling yourself it's okay to feel this way as you're vocalizing that. And vocalization is very powerful, like actively speaking out loud, activating your vocal cords, hearing your own voice say these things is incredibly powerful versus just like thinking them. And of course, everyone's different, so it can be differently effective for others. I find it incredibly effective so I've used this personally for anxiety, for not being able to sleep. I've used it for food cravings. I've used it for just like fear coming up around anything, like with business, with work, with imposter syndrome stuff. I've used it with just like having low confidence or low self-esteem around stuff. I've used it with like financial blocks, like stories I've told myself around money and finances and what that means and what I can and can't have. I've yeah, all the way up to like really getting into a flow state with it. So like there's so many different levels, but at best it can really help somebody who's feeling burnt out, somebody who feels stuck in a survival state, help to gently guide themselves back to that safety state in a way that brings them to like a neutral. So typically the way that the process goes is you tap on the negative or you tap on the uncomfortable until you bring that activated state to like you would rate it. So you'd be like, I'm at a level 10 anxiety, I'm like freaking out, and you would tap on it and you would continue to just take note of like, okay, it's going down a little bit. It's going down a little bit. It's not as strong until it gets close to like a 0. And this could happen within, minutes. And then once you're at that neutral state where you've kind of released that emotion, then you can start to tap in on how you want to feel, how you want to change this belief, this limiting belief that's deep inside of you. You can start to bring in the positive around that and sort of like build yourself up in terms of how you want to view this going forward. And I would just say, don't knock it until you've tried it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think Ari Whitten posted a research article showing, some of the science behind tapping. Do you have to do all the points? Like, let's say you have issue X. Do you have to tap all the different points and vocalize it, or can you do just a few?
Yeah, you can do just a few. Honestly, there's like, I want to say there's like no wrong way to do it.
Right. As long as
There's,
it gets you that safety state.
yeah, yeah. People are like, how many times do you need to tap on each point? What's the right, you know,
Right.
order? I'm like, just do it.
Right.
Just do it. Doesn't
Yeah.
even matter. Just do it. Which is so
Absolutely.
nice because it's like I don't have to follow this protocol. I actually can like do this thing and just worry about tuning into me.
Right. Absolutely. How has your exercise and workouts, how have they changed over the years to reflect your current
To reflect my current what?
body of knowledge?
Oh, a lot, a lot. I would say 10 years ago, Christine was starting her bodybuilding life in New York City and was training with like hardcore bodybuilding coaches and looking to step on stage and would, you know, I was just worried about gaining muscle and working out as hard as possible. Um, and I was still very focused on aesthetics back then. That was just around the time where things started to shift and I really started to notice how movement played such a drastic role in my mental health.
Mhm.
And once I struggled with depression and anxiety and recognized how movement could shift my state, even if it was
Right.
for a few hours a day, and then I could build on that, kind
Mhm.
of everything changed for me. So, right. So now I still lifts, like weightlifting is still one of the greatest loves of my life. And I love pushing weight and I love lifting heavy, but I don't do things that I don't want to do anymore. I don't move in ways that don't feel good. I move in ways that truly bring my heart like joy and make me feel alive. I do a lot more movement outside. I play tennis outside. I just came back from a trip to Tahoe, Lake Tahoe, because I wanted to relearn to snowboard because I missed moving outside in the snow and in winter. And I just live my life through movement. I
That's
dance.
awesome.
I just want to expand my experience of life by consuming it through movement.
So you're
Yeah.
not walking around with a TI 83 calculator counting macros, carbs,
Zero.
stuff like
No.
that. Yeah.
Nope. I don't even own like an Apple Watch. I don't track anything. None of that matters to me because it's all about how I feel. It's all about what feels good. And don't get me wrong, like I work hard, like especially when I'm lifting weights. Like I love the feeling of being out of breath. I love the feeling of pushing something to failure. Do I need to do that every day? No. Do I
Right.
want to do that every day? No. And so I truly do. It's more of like an intuitive relationship with
Right.
movement now. Whereas before I'd be like, discipline. You said you were going to go to the gym and do this workout
Right.
until you collapsed. And now, yeah, I still have discipline. Like I'm still going to move, but I'm much more, I don't know, maybe in partnership with my body. I don't
Right. That's a
have,
good way to put it.
I don't have any physical like goals as I once did. So that's just not something that is important to me at this time.
I think you may have already answered this, but what's something you know today that you wish you would have known, say, 10 years ago?
Um, I would say I'm trying to think of a way that to say it that makes the most sense, but um, it doesn't have to be as hard as you think it does in all in all aspects of life. You're probably making it harder because you believe it needs to be hard for you to feel like you earned it, but actually you're making it harder than it needs to be in a lot of cases. So
Do you
it's
see,
okay.
and this will be my last question for you, but do you see self-sabotaging behaviors in a lot of your clients, whether they know it or not?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I see that a ton. I mean, I've seen it myself. I haven't
Same.
worked very hard at it. Um, but thank you so much for being here. You're a wealth of knowledge. We're lucky to have you on. Keep putting out the great content. We'll keep watching, and we're going to post all your links, and hopefully you get some more followers. Not that you need them.
Well, thank you. I just hope that, somebody finds value in what I shared. And that would be worth it all. So thanks for having me, Dr. Tim. Thanks for being so
Absolutely.
persistent.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we can have you on again in the future.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks.